February the 28th, 2025, 3:47 and 15 seconds, AM. Monitoring stations across Campi Flegrei registered seismic signatures that violated every principle of independent fault behavior. Not isolated tremors, not random earthquake swarms. Systematic pressure transfer between fault networks, where each fracture activation triggered stress release in adjacent zones, creating the first documented geological chain reaction beneath a populated metropolitan area. Dr. Giacomo Rapagnani's seismic imaging revealed the terrifying scope: interconnected fracture systems spanning the entire volcanic complex, operating like mechanical linkages designed for maximum pressure distribution. What scientists assumed were separate fault segments proved to be components in a unified stress transfer mechanism that Campi Flegrei has been constructing for 2 decades. Real-time seismic data showed the sequence unfolding: fault activation near Pozzuoli, then stress transfer to the Solfatara network, then a pressure cascade toward the Bagnoli fracture zone, then a systematic progression through the entire caldera structure. Each zone responded to pressure changes in adjacent areas with mathematical precision, proving the volcanic system has achieved structural coupling. But seismological modelling reveals the catastrophic potential. Once activated, geological chain reactions become self-perpetuating until all stored energy finds release. Each fault failure creates pressure imbalances that force neighbouring zones toward their breaking points, accelerating the sequence until the entire network discharges simultaneously. When fault systems beneath populated areas begin operating as a unified chain reaction mechanism, what triggers the systematic cascade that could activate every fracture zone in perfect sequence? And how fast can geological dominoes fall when the pressure transfer system spans an entire supervolcano? To grasp the scale of Campi Flegrei's emerging chain reaction threat, we need to examine the volcano's long history of systematic fault activation. This geological time bomb has been building pressure networks for over 40,000 years, each eruption cycle laying the groundwork for progressively larger seismic catastrophes. The Campanian Ignimbrite eruption 40,000 years ago provided the first glimpse of Campi Flegrei's capacity for synchronized self-destruction. Stratigraphic analysis reveals a systematic caldera collapse sequence where fault network failures triggered sympathetic ruptures in a geological line dance that consumed the entire magma chamber. 15,000 years later, the Neapolitan Yellow Tuff event unleashed a fresh horror: coordinated eruptions from multiple vents spanning the volcanic complex. Seismic reflections show magmatic dikes propagating along active fault conduits, allowing each eruptive center to feed off the pressure release of its neighbors, until the whole caldera emptied simultaneously. But it was the 1538 Monte Nuovo eruption that exposed Campi Flegrei's potential for chain reaction cataclysm in real time. Eyewitness accounts describe a stepwise activation sequence: initial tremors near Pozzuoli, building to a crescendo of seismic waves marching east toward the eruptive vent. The lithic fragments ejected tell a story of systematic rock fracturing, as each fault zone shattered in perfect synchronization to focus maximum energy on the final blowout. For 5 centuries, this mechanical linkage lay dormant, disguised as a series of isolated earthquake swarms. But seismic archives expose Campi Flegrei's hidden chain reaction infrastructure, gearing up for a new era of networked devastation. From 1950 to 1952, the Brady seismic crisis first unveiled the pressure transfer system evolving beneath Naples. Localized fault segments near Pozzuoli displayed coordinated slip behavior, as each tremor induced stress adjustments in adjacent cracks. From 1969 to 1972, the surge expanded the stage, with seismographs capturing synchronized ground deformation rippling through an entire district. But it was the emergency from 1982 to 1984 that forced volcanologists to acknowledge Campi Flegrei's emerging chain reaction potential. Harmonic tremor analysis revealed multiple fault networks pulsing in unison, responding to distant earthquake signals like a geological orchestra following a hidden conductor. In just 30 years, isolated faults had evolved into an integrated seismic machine. The mathematical implications are stark. Dr. Giacomo Rapagnani's laboratory has now confirmed what the historical data foreshadowed. Synchronized seismic pulses indicate structural coupling across multiple fault networks, creating systematic pressure transfer capabilities. Translation: Campi Flegrei's fracture zones no longer operate independently. They have become links in a geological chain welded together by 2 decades of networked failure. To visualize Campi Flegrei's tectonic time bomb, imagine a subterranean spiderweb stretching 13 kilometers across, each thread a fault line loaded with unimaginable energy. For 20 years, every seismic jolt, every harmonic shiver, every sympathetic vibration has pulled those strands tighter, weaving isolated cracks into a unified geological net. Now seismic imaging has mapped that hidden architecture in terrifying detail. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a labyrinthine pressure transfer system, each fault segment connected to its neighbours by fluid-filled passageways that act like tectonic hydraulics. Very long-period signals pulse through those buried pipes, telegraphing stress changes between distant fracture zones at the speed of sound in rock. The result is a mechanical chain reaction system operating beneath 900,000 people, each component primed to fail in perfect sequence. Every fault rupture now reverberates through the entire network, each break adding momentum to the geological domino effect, until the whole caldera unzips itself. And the scariest part, Campi Flegrei's chain reaction engine is just getting warmed up. Each fresh earthquake swarm is not an isolated seismic hiccup. It is a networked systems check, a live fire exercise for the geological big one. Over the last 3 years alone, the caldera has racked up 18,500 high-precision tremors, each one a test run for Armageddon. Because in a seismic chain reaction network, practice makes perfect. Every fresh fault failure forges new linkages in the underground plumbing, teaching the pressure transfer system how to propagate breaks faster and farther. It is a tectonic machine learning protocol, each cycle building on the mechanical lessons of the last, until the whole caldera achieves doctoral level efficiency in the physics of collapse. The real-time seismic data from February 28, 2025 is mathematical proof that Campi Flegrei's doomsday device is now fully armed. Strain meters captured the deadly sequence unfolding with merciless precision as an invisible finger taps a fault line near Pozzuoli and sends a pressure pulse racing 3 kilometers to the Solfatara fracture zone. Solfatara snaps a microsecond later. The seismic wavefront rolls east like a geological tsunami until it meets the Bagnoli faults, already teetering at their breaking point. The chain reaction then thunders through the eastern caldera. Each fault zone shatters exactly on schedule, shooting the fatal bolt of energy toward the next link. Seismographs sketch the system's efficiency in stark lines. 120 seconds for a pressure pulse to traverse 13 kilometers, tripping 24 separate fault segments in one lethal cascade. For the first time in human history, seismic graphs did not record an earthquake. They mapped the evolutionary leap of a newborn tectonic superweapon achieving full operational capability. And the United Nations Glob Volcano monitoring system has now confirmed what those jagged seismic lines foretold. Campi Flegrei's chain reaction engine is running faster and hotter with every iteration. Harmonic tremor signals show each fault zone primed a little closer to failure, and each earthquake swarm leaves behind microfractures that reduce the pressure needed for the next big break. This seismic evolution is not just happening in the deep subsurface. It is modifying the very crust beneath Naples into a gigantic mousetrap. each geological piece arranged for maximum devastation when an outside force trips the tectonic trigger. For the 900,000 residents packed above Campi Flegrei's coiled chain reaction spring, there is no escaping the crosshairs. Every neighbourhood, every street, every bedroom from Pozzuoli to Bagnoli now sits on a potential ground zero, as 13 kilometres of buried domino lines snake beneath suburbs and schoolyards alike. The threat is not just theoretical. Engineering surveys now confirm at least 24 critical infrastructure points, hospitals, power plants, and rail terminals built directly above the caldera's highest velocity pressure corridors. When the big one hits, the first casualties will not be from collapsing buildings. They will be from high pressure steaming as the chain reaction rips open the hydrothermal plumbing. Municipal evacuation plans designed for isolated earthquake events now read like death warrants in a tectonic war zone. When every fault breaks simultaneously, which Red Cross tent takes priority? Which emergency route stays passable when all roads lie on ground shattering faster than the speed of flight? For city planners accustomed to poring over flood maps and hurricane tracks, Campi Flegrei's seismic spiderweb requires a new vocabulary of doom. The chain reaction blast radius encompasses an entire volcanic province, threatening to put the regional capital of Campania on the front line of a cataclysm with no geological off-switch. The first domino is already wobbling in its seismic slot. Just 3 kilometers north of central Naples, the Campi Flegrei fault zone is bucking harder than any point in recorded history. Strain meters near Pozzuoli now register 5 times the shear failure threshold of ordinary rock, the crust straining to hold back a decade's worth of accumulated stress. Thermal scans show hydrothermal fluids flash boiling inside the fault plane, building to steam hammer pressures strong enough to pulverize granite. Harmonic tremor maps glow red hot as the whole zone ripples with the seismic chatter of imminent rupture. It is not a question of if the fault will break. It is a race to see which section shatters first. And when it does, the rest of the dominoes are already lined up for catastrophe. Just 5 kilometers east, the Bagnoli fault zone is primed for sympathetic failure, its rock fabric shot through with micro cracks from the last earthquake swarm. To the south, the Neapolitan yellow tuff conduits gape open like high-pressure gas mains, ready to shoot the chain reaction east toward Vesuvius. This is not just a Neapolitan nightmare, it is a glimpse of the networked seismic future awaiting every major metropolis in Campi Flegrei's tectonic family tree. Because the Italian peninsula is not just a vacation postcard, it is a geological war zone, its crust shot through with battle scars from 100 million years of underthrusting, folding and magmatic assault. The same fault webs now strangling Naples stretch the length of the Apennine Mountains, sprawling beneath medieval villages and modern cities alike. The Calabrian Arc, the Adriatic Plate boundary, the Tyrrhenian Basin, all of them crisscrossed with the kind of deeply buried shatter zones that Campi Flegrei has just weaponized. In a world where earthquake-resistant means built to survive a 30-second isolated shake, what happens when the big one lasts 5 minutes and propagates in a dozen directions simultaneously? When the first high-rise topples in a sympathetic fault break 2 provinces away, will the evacuation buses even know which refugee camp to head for? These are not theoretical questions. They are the cold, hard math, now facing every Italian civil defence planner from Milan to Messina. Because in the tectonic realm, chain reactions do not just break the physical landscape, they shatter our conceptual maps of how seismic risk unfolds. In the shadow of Campi Flegrei's looming chain reaction, the scientific consensus is chilling. Dr. Simone Cesca, leader of Europe's premier geodynamics research team, minced no words. Once geological chain reactions reach critical momentum, they become self-perpetuating until all stored pressure finds release. Translation: Campi Flegrei's pressure valves are welded shut. The caldera has spent 20 years packing every cubic meter of crust with unreleased energy, and the only exit route is through catastrophic failure. The February 28th earthquake swarm was not a warning shot, it was a mathematical proof that the whole system is one break away from unstoppable fury. The seismic archives tell the same story. Every major volcanic eruption in Earth's history, from Mount Pinatubo to Krakatoa, was preceded by harmonic tremor buildups, like the ones now pulsing beneath Naples. It is the tectonic equivalent of a tea kettle shrieking as the water hits terminal boil, and Campi Flegrei's whistle just reached a fever pitch. But the scariest implication of Dr. Cheska's analysis is not what it means for people living above the chain reaction line of fire. It is what it reveals about humanity's fundamental helplessness in the face of networked geological violence. Because the tectonic genie is out of the bottle. Our best scientific minds have now confirmed that earthquake faults do not just rupture, they communicate, collaborating across vast distances to synchronize their attacks. Campi Flegrei's chain reaction engine is just the first lab test of a seismic doomsday device that will reshape every coastline and mountain range on Earth. And we have no tools to stop it. Every ground motion sensor, every strain meter, every satellite radar array is just a front row seat to an existential spectacle, a way to measure destruction unfolding faster than human reflexes can react. When the dominoes start to fall and the crust comes undone, all our fancy instruments will capture a play-by-play of our own obsolescence in the tectonic arena. That cold reality is now crashing down on the 3 million people in Campi Flegrei's impact radius. The Italian government's vaunted civil defence protocols, the same ones that earned European Resilience Awards after the L'Aquila quake, read like pitiful relics of a bygone age when devastation still gave us time to run. Retrofit every hospital, reinforce every bridge, weld every pipeline, with Kevlar reinforced alloys. None of it matters when the enemy is the very ground beneath our feet. No amount of evacuation drills can outpace a chain reaction that covers kilometers in seconds. No barricade can withstand a dozen fault planes detonating like anti-tank mines. And that is the real lesson Campi Flegrei's chain reaction is about to teach the world. In the era of tectonic weapons that do not wait for anyone's permission to fire, the only thing more terrifying than the big one is the network of hidden failures programmed to follow it. So while volcanologists race to plug their supercomputers into Campi Flegrei's seismic web, while engineers scramble to model what happens when the dominoes fall beneath skyscrapers and schools, the Neapolitan nightmare has already begun. Because the magma is not in the chamber anymore. It is in the cracks, in the faults, in the pressure highways connecting each watch zone into nature's deadly kill box. The countdown to impact will not start with a siren or a warning bulletin. It will begin with an invisible finger tapping a weak point near Pozzuoli, and it will end with the crust unzipping itself from below until the whole caldera screams. It is not a matter of if or even when. In the mathematical universe where Campi Flegrei's chain reaction engine now operates, asking how to stop the dominoes is like hoping for a miracle as bullets fly. And when the shaking starts, there will not be time for prayers, only for feeling the cold equations of tectonic physics impose their fatal logic on a human landscape that has run out of safe ground. Subscribe and join Earth Attacks, where we expose the seismic weapons that operate beneath our feet. Even the most advanced warning systems can become useless against the power of networked geological violence. Next week, we are diving into exactly how Campi Flegrei's chain reaction activation could destabilize fault networks across the entire Mediterranean, and what it means when volcanoes start thinking in geologic time while humans plan in 24-hour news cycles. Trust me, you will not want to miss it.